Welcome back to Harville. How do you pronounce the name of your movie?
It's religious. It's like you're saying religion and then you go to ridiculous, for obvious reasons.
Well, speaking of which, let's take a look at a little favorite of ours now from last Friday. This is Minnesota Congresswoman Michele Bachmann and what she had to say about her colleagues on Capitol Hill. So this is a character issue. You believe that Barack Obama may, you're suspicious because of this relationship, may have anti-American views. Otherwise, it's probably irrelevant to this discussion. So
Absolutely.
You believe it brings in the, so you believe that Barack Obama may have anti-American views?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very concerned that he may have anti-American views. That's what the American people are concerned about. That's why they want to know what his answers are. That's why Joe the plumber has figured so highly in the last few days.
Okay.
Because Joe the plumber, what I would say is that the news media should do a penetrating expose and take a look. I wish they would. I wish the American media would take a great look at the views of the people in Congress and find out, are they pro-America or anti-America? I think people would love to see an expose like that.
Hey, Bill, are you willing to take up your burden on that and conduct a penetrating investigation of the anti-American views on the other side of the aisle?
Chris, I love it when you give dumb people just enough rope to hang themselves. And I must say, I had not heard of this congressperson before this, but I did see your show, and I saw her do this, and I thought, oh, that's going to be an issue. But what I've heard about her is...
Can I cue you up another one? Here's something fresh from today, fresh from the world of 2008 politics. This is the vice presidential nominee of the Republican Party talking about her notion of what the vice presidency holds for her.
A vice president has a really great job because not only are they there to support the president's agenda, they're like the team member, the teammate to that president, but also they're in charge of the United States Senate. So if they want to, they can really get in there with the senators and make a lot of good policy changes that will make life better.
Wow. I heard this begin during the debate when her notion of the vice presidency is she's going to run the U.S. Senate. I thought it was a formality to just break ties and sit up there. She says she's going to basically be in charge of the Senate. She's going to get through good policy. She's going to get in there and work. I guess she has to take a look at the Constitution before she, well, at least takes office.
Well, that would involve reading, Chris, so I wouldn't hold your breath on that. I was just going to say, before you showed the second clip, that what I've been hearing about this congresswoman in Minnesota is that she's the only person in public office these days who's actually dumber than Palin. But I don't know. After I heard that clip that you just showed me, that's a toss-up. That's a real Beavis and Butthead we've got there.
Are you smarter than a third grader?
Finally, Governor, we've been trying to engage some local grade schoolers for the last few elections. We do a feature called Questions from the Third Grade.
Good.
Brandon Garcia wants to know, what does the vice president do?
Oh, that's something the Piper would ask me as a second grader also. That's a great question, Brandon, and a vice president has a really great job because not only are they there to support the president's agenda, they're like the team member, the teammate to that president, but also they're in charge of the United States Senate. So if they want to, they can really get in there with the senators and make a lot of good policy changes that will make life better for Brandon and his family and his classroom, and it's a great job, and I look forward to having that job.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Governor. The correct answer can be found in the Constitution of the United States. Article 1, Section 3, the Vice President of the United States shall be President of the Senate, but shall have no vote unless they be equally divided. So the Vice President is not in charge of jack, Governor, let alone in charge of the Senate. And you are not smarter than a third grader. On the one level, it is hilarious and entertaining that the Republican nominee cannot correctly answer the question, what does the vice president do? I mean, that first reference to the vice president comes not 600 words into the Constitution. And the other meaty references are pretty simple to remember. Article 2, Section 1, in case of the removal of the president from office or of his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of his said office, the same shall devolve on the vice president. There's also the 20th Amendment, you're done on January 20th, and the 25th Amendment, if the president's incapacitated, you're the acting prez. It's so simple, really. One could memorize those 4 points pretty easily. Wouldn't take long. Brandon Garcia could do it in the 3rd grade, probably. So on the one level, this is pretty damn silly. The Sarah Palin material, as Tina Fey might be able to say, just writes itself. As it does, it makes stupid mistakes, but it still writes itself. Except there are 2 very serious aspects to this. Governor, do you really think you'd be in charge of the United States Senate? Do you really want to suggest that you think if you want to, you can really get in there with the senators and make a lot of good policy changes? We're just wrapping up 8 years of a vice president who had no clue what his damned job consisted of, couldn't even correctly find his governmental branch with both hands. The last thing anybody in this country wants, Republican or Democrat, is another buccaneer in there making it up as they go along. And in your case, presuming you can stride into the Senate and change policy if you want to. Besides which, Governor, exactly how on earth could you not have the correct answer by now? It's not like this is the first time you've been asked about the vice presidency and gone all Miss South Carolina on us.
Is this police flap state investigation going to disqualify you from becoming Senator McCain's vice presidential candidate?
As for that VP talk all the time, I tell you, I still can't answer that question until somebody answers for me. What is it exactly that the VP does every day? I'm used to being very productive and working real hard in administration. We want to make sure that that VP slot would be a fruitful type of position, especially for Alaskans and for the things that we're trying to accomplish up here for the rest of the U.S. before I can even start addressing that question.
That was on the 31st of July on CNBC, Governor, even giving you the biggest benefit of the doubt that your later claim that that was just a lame attempt at a joke. You couldn't come up with the correct job description on the 2nd try? What am I saying, the 3rd try?
Governor, you said in July that you would have to, someone would have to explain to you exactly what it is the vice president does every day.
In my comment there, it was a lame attempt at a joke, and yours was a lame attempt at a joke too, I guess, because nobody got it. Of course, we know what a vice president does, and that's not only preside over the Senate, and we'll take that position very seriously also. I'm thankful that the Constitution would allow a bit more authority given to the vice president also, if that vice president so chose to exert it in working with the Senate. And making sure that we are supportive of the president's policies, and making sure, too, that our president understands what our strengths are.
No! No, Governor, the Constitution does not allow a bit more authority if the vice president so chose to exert it in working with the Senate. You would not be some kind of senatorial hall monitor. You would not be a veto or a censor or a balance. And even if you think you would somehow obtain those powers from somebody, don't pretend the Constitution will give them to you.
Thankfully, our founders were wise enough to say we have this position and it's constitutional. Vice president will be able to be not only the position flexible, but it's going to be sort of those other duties as assigned by the president. A simple thing. I don't think that was a gaffe at all in stating what the truth is, and that is we've got flexibility in the position. The president will be directing in a lot of respects what the vice president does. The vice president, of course, is not a member or a part of the legislative branch except to oversee the Senate. That alone provides a tremendous amount of flexibility and authority if that vice president so chose to use it.
You're wrong. The word flexibility appears nowhere near in the Constitution. You've memorized everything else, Governor. You couldn't memorize the job description in 3 months? 4 tries? I mean, I'd like my president and my vice president to have memorized the Constitution and to abide by it. Or at least I'd like them to know more about the Constitution than I do, or than Brandon Garcia does in the 3rd grade. Maybe I'm raising the bar too high. But at least wait until you achieve office before trying to seize power extra-constitutionally. The founders, Governor, were not George Bush and Dick Cheney. Give me something to work with here, Governor, or go home. And please don't forget to take your lovely parting gifts with you, including the home version of the Vice President game.